I sold my 7-year-old son's happiness for $400, and now I might lose him forever. It started with a gift. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, sent a $1,600 iPad Pro to our house, playing the role of the generous grandmother. But hours later, the mask slipped. She called me, demanding a transfer of $3,000 to cover her cash flow issues. When I refused because I was secretly drowning in debt, she did not scream. She waited. She tracked the device using a hidden app. She watched me drive to a pawn shop in the dead of night to sell it just to keep the lights on. I thought I was saving my family from financial ruin, but I was walking right into a trap she had set years ago. Now, my husband looks at me with disgust. My credit cards are destroyed, and Evelyn has filed a lawsuit for full custody, claiming I am an unfit mother. She has the money, the lawyers, and the terrifying patience of a spider watching a fly struggle in a web. I am sitting in a cold apartment, realizing that the woman who promised to help us actually wants to replace me. Is it really stealing if you are trying to survive? And how do you fight a monster who owns the bank? Please, tell me. 2# is greater than how far would you go to save your child from his own grandmother? My name is Mia, and I am a liar. I do not lie to hurt people. I do not lie for personal gain or to manipulate the narrative of a crime. I lie to survive the suffocating perfection of my own life. I am 32 years old, a freelance graphic designer with a portfolio that looks better on Instagram than it pays in reality. And I live in Westport, Connecticut. If you know Westport, you know the type of silence that hangs over these streets. It is not the silence of peace. It is the silence of judgment. We live in a 4-bedroom colonial on a cul-de-sac where the lawns are manicured to within an inch of their lives, and the American flags on the porches are always crisp, never faded. To the outside world, to the neighbors walking their golden retrievers at 6 in the morning, and especially to my husband, Tom, I am the picture of a pulled-together suburban mother, but the truth is hiding in the bottom drawer of my desk, buried under stacks of fabric swatches and rejection letters from design agencies. It is a spreadsheet that I only open when the house is empty, usually after Tom has left for his finance job in Stanford and our 7-year-old son, Leo, is at school. The truth is a number, -$42,000. That is the combined total of 3 maxed out credit cards and a personal loan I took out last year to cover the essentials of maintaining this lifestyle. The organic groceries, the private tutoring for Leo, the seasonal decor that the Homeowners Association subtly mandates. Tom does not know. He thinks his salary covers everything. He thinks I am just naturally good at stretching a dollar. If he knew that I was drowning, that I was paying one credit card with another, the fragile ecosystem of our marriage would collapse. It was a Tuesday in mid-November when the package arrived. The sky was a bruised shade of gray, threatening the first snow of the season. I was sitting at my kitchen island, staring at a bank notification on my phone, an overdraft warning. When the doorbell rang, it was a sharp, intrusive sound that made me jump. I walked to the door, my heart doing that familiar flutter of anxiety I had grown used to. Every time the doorbell rang, I feared it was a process server or a debt collector, even though I knew they usually called first. It was just a FedEx driver. He was holding a box that looked small but felt heavy with consequence. "Sign here, please," he said. Bored, I scribbled my name, my hand trembling slightly. I looked at the return address. The label was printed in elegant, custom font, not the standard shipping sticker. Mrs. Evelyn Sterling, The Hamptons, New York. My stomach turned. My mother-in-law. I carried the box into the kitchen and set it down on the quartz countertop. It sat there like an unexploded ordnance. Evelyn did not send care packages. She sent statements. Every gift she had ever given us came with strings attached, usually woven into a passive-aggressive comment about how we could not afford it ourselves. I should have waited for Tom. I should have left it sealed. But then I heard the school bus screech to a halt outside. Leo burst through the door a moment later, bringing the cold air and the smell of dead leaves with him. He dropped his backpack on the floor, ignoring the coat rack as usual. "Mom, is that for me?" He spotted the box immediately. His eyes, so like his father's, lit up with a hunger that made me sad. We had been saying no to him a lot lately. No to the new cleats. No to the expensive summer camp. I do not know. "Leo, it is from Grandma Evelyn," I said, my voice tight. "Grandma Ev." He did not wait. He grabbed a pair of scissors from the drawer before I could stop him. He sliced through the tape with surgical precision. I watched, paralyzed by a sense of dread I could not name. He pulled back the cardboard flaps and gasped. "No way," he whispered. "No way." He reached in and pulled out a sleek, white box. The silver Apple logo shimmered under the kitchen recessed lighting. It was an iPad Pro, the newest model, the one with the terabyte of storage and the cellular data plan. I knew how much this cost because I had looked it up a month ago, fantasized about buying it for my design work, and then closed the tab in despair. It was roughly $1,600, maybe more with the taxes. She got it. She actually got it. Leo was screaming now, jumping up and down. I told her I wanted it for Roblox and drawing, and she got it. He tore the plastic wrap off. The sound was like a zipper opening on a body bag. "Leo, wait," I said, stepping forward. "We need to talk to Dad first." "Why?" He was already pressing the power button. The screen glowed to life, illuminating his ecstatic face. "It is a gift. Grandma loves me. Grandma loves to win," I thought, but I did not say it. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I knew who it was before I looked. I pulled it out. The contact photo was a picture of Evelyn smiling at a charity gala, holding a glass of champagne. I took a deep breath, put on my grateful daughter-in-law mask, and slid the answer button. "Hello? Evelyn," I said. "We just got the package." "Oh, good." Her voice purred through the speaker. It was a rich, cultivated voice, smooth as velvet but cold as ice. I was worried the delivery service would leave it on the porch. "You know how much theft there is in your Howling. 2# is greater than neighborhood. Westport was one of the safest towns in America. It is safe here, Evelyn, but thank you. It is Howling. 2# is greater than it is too much. Leo is over the moon. Well, the boy needs the best tools if he is going to be an architect or an engineer. I do not want him falling behind because his parents are Howling. Dos numeral es mayor que frugal. I gripped the phone tighter. Frugal. If only she knew. It is very generous, I said, watching Leo tap furiously on the screen. He was already lost to me, sucked into the digital world she had provided. "Listen, Mia, darling." Evelyn's tone shifted. It became brisk, businesslike. "Since I have you on the line, I need a tiny favor." A hiccup. "Really?" My chest tightened. "What is it?" "My liquid assets are tied up in a bridge loan for the new property in Palm Beach until Monday. Very boring banking nonsense. But I have a vendor coming to fix the pool heater at the Hamptons house today, and he only takes cash or Venmo. Can you zip me $3,000? I will wire it back to you on Tuesday when the trust fund distribution clears. I stopped breathing. The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. 3. Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than 1,000? I stammered. Yes, just Venmo it to my account. You have it. Do you not? Evelyn. Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than. I looked at Leo. He was so happy. I do not have $3,000 just sitting in my Venmo balance. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Mia, she said, and the velvet was gone. Now it was just sandpaper. I just spent nearly $2,000 on a device for your son because you could not provide it. I am asking for a simple, short-term transfer. Are you telling me that my son's wife, living in that house, does not have $3,000 available? The trap snapped shut. If I said no, I admitted we were struggling. If I admitted we were struggling, she would dig. She would ask Tom, and Tom would look at the bank accounts. It is not that. I lead, my voice shaking. It is just, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than the daily transfer limit. Nonsense. Banks allow up to 5,000. Do not lie to me. Nia, it is unbecoming. She let out a short, sharp sigh. Is this you being petty? Because I bought him the gift you could not? No, it is not about the iPad. Then send the money. Consider it a lesson in cash flow management. I am helping you. Really, it builds credit to move money around. She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. Do it now. Darling, before the pool man leaves. I would hate to tell Tom that his wife is being difficult over a few pennies after I was so generous with Leo. She hung up. The silence rushed back into the kitchen, louder than before. I stood there, clutching the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. $3,000. I did not have $3,000. I had negative $42,000. I looked at Leo. He was sitting on the floor now, cross-legged, the iPad propped up on his knees. He looked up at me, his face glowing in the artificial blue light. Mom, look, it has the pencil too. I can draw everything. I looked at his smile. It was pure, unadulterated joy. A joy purchased by a woman who was currently holding a gun to my head. I opened my banking app. The balance mocked me. Checking. $412.50. Credit line uno. Limit reached. Credit line doi. Limit reached. I could feel the panic rising. A cold tide starting at my feet and rising to my throat. I had to find $3,000. I had to find it now. Or Evelyn would call Tom. She would make a comment, a yoke, a concern, and the dominoes would start to fall. I looked at the iPad again. It was brand new, sealed in the box. It was worth $1,600. Opened, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than it was worth less, but still valuable. My eyes drifted to the drawer where I kept the emergency credit card. The one Tom did not know about. The one with the predatory interest rate that I had sworn never to touch again. It had a 0 balance, but only a $500 limit. Not enough. I needed cash. Fast. Mom, you okay? Leo asked, his smile fading slightly as he noticed my pale face. I am fine, baby, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face open. Just, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than Grandma Evelyn. She always has a lot to say. I walked over to the window and looked out at the perfect street. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the lawns. The golden light caught the leaves of the oak tree in the front yard, turning them the color of old pennies. It looked idyllic. It looked rich, but from where I was standing, inside the house, it looked like the bars of a cage. I looked down at my phone again. A notification popped up from Venmo. A request from Evelyn Sterling. Request $3,000. Note, pool and iPad reimbursement. Partial. She had changed the narrative already. Now it was not a loan. It was a reimbursement. I felt a wave of nausea. I was trapped. And the worst part was, as I looked at that shiny new tablet in my son's hands, I realized this was only the beginning. The sound of the garage door opening usually brought me a sense of relief. It meant the day was over. It meant I had survived another 12 hours of maintaining the facade. But tonight, the mechanical groan of the door rising felt like the rumble of an approaching tank. Tom walked in through the mudroom door 7 minutes later. He looked every inch the successful Fairfield County commuter. His navy suit was wrinkled just enough to suggest hard work, but not enough to look sloppy. He carried the scent of train station coffee and expensive cologne. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his keys in the ceramic bowl on the console table. He leaned in to kiss me. I turned my cheek slightly, not out of malice, but because I felt like my skin was vibrating with anxiety, and I did not want him to feel the hum of it. "Hey," I said, "how was the city?" Tom loosened his tie, the silk hissing softly as he pulled it free. "Brutal. Market is all over the place. I need a drink. Is Leo down?" "He is upstairs with the new iPad," I said. I watched his reaction carefully. Tom stopped midway to the liquor cabinet. A slow smile spread across his face, the kind of smile that made him look like the boy he used to be. The boy Evelyn had molded like wet clay. "Oh, right. Mom texted me. She said he loved it. That was nice of her, right?" He poured a finger of bourbon into a crystal glass. He did not offer me one. He assumed I was still on my health kick, the one I had invented to explain why I stopped going to the expensive brunch spots with the other moms. "Tom, we need to talk about it," I said. I was standing behind the kitchen island, gripping the edge of the marble so hard my knuckles turned white. He took a sip and turned to face me, his eyebrows raised. "Talk about what? It is a gift. Mia, do not overthink it. You always overthink her gifts. Remember the cashmere throw? You thought it was a comment on our heating bill. She sent me a Venmo request." Tom paused. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "For what?" "For $3,000. She said she needs cash for a pool repairman in the Hamptons, and she is tied up with bank transfers. She wants me to spot her the money until Tuesday." Tom laughed. It was a dry, unconcerned sound that made me want to scream. "That sounds like Mom. She probably forgot her wallet in the city or something. Just send it to her. Mia, you know she is good for it. She has more money than God." I stared at him. I felt like I was speaking a different language. "Tom, it is $3,000. I do not have $3,000 just sitting in my checking account to loan out on a Tuesday night." Tom set his glass down. The humor faded from his eyes, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. It was the look he gave me when I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning or when I asked too many questions about his schedule. "Mia, come on. We have the savings. Just transfer it from the joint savings account." My heart stopped. The joint savings account. The one that was supposed to have $15,000 in it. The one I had drained down to $400 3 months ago. to pay off a looming credit card lawsuit that would have garnished his wages and exposed everything. I could not let him look at that account. I cannot, I said quickly. Too quickly. Why not? Because zou je ting haling, twee hekjes groter dan. I lead, my mind racing, because I moved it. I moved the liquid cash into a high-yield certificate of deposit last week. You know, the one we talked about, to get better interest rates. It is locked up for 6 months. I held my breath. We had talked about it, briefly, over dinner a month ago. I prayed he remembered the conversation, but not the fact that he never actually authorized the transfer. Tom rubbed his temples. Right, the certificate of deposit. I forgot. He seehid, picking up his glass again. Well, just tell her no then. Tell her our cash is tied up too. She will understand. He turned his back to me and walked toward the living room, dismissing the crisis as if it were nothing more than a gnat buzzing around his head. She will not understand. Tom, I called after him, desperation leaking into my voice. She was weird on the phone. She made it sound like, zou je ting haling, 2 hash is greater than, like if I did not pay. I was ungrateful, like I was stealing the iPad. Tom stopped in the doorway. He did not turn around. Mia, you are being dramatic. Mom can be intense, but she is not a monster. She just likes things done her way. Just call her. Be nice. It is a test. A test? I whispered. Yeah, a test. She likes to see if people are reliable. Just handle it. Okay? I have to answer some emails before bed. He walked away. He went into his study and closed the door. I was alone in the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator sounded deafening. Handle it. That was Tom's solution to everything. He managed million-dollar portfolios, but he could not manage his own mother. He left the emotional labor to me, unaware that the cost of that labor was bankrupting us. Literally and figuratively, I looked at my phone. The Venmo notification was still there, a red badge of shame. I had to call her. I had to end this. I walked out to the back patio. The air was biting cold, biting through my thin sweater, but I needed to be outside. I needed the darkness. I dialed Evelyn's number. She answered on the second ring. Well, her voice was clipped. Did you sort out your little transfer limit issue? Evelyn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I spoke to Tom. There was a silence on the line. I could hear the faint sound of classical music in the background, probably playing from her Bose speakers in that cavernous living room in the Hamptons. We cannot send the money. Evelyn, our funds are zou je ting haling. 2 hash is greater than allocated right now in investments. We do not have that kind of liquid cash available tonight. I waited for the explosion. I waited for the yelling. But Evelyn did not yell. She did something far worse. She chuckled. It was a low, throaty sound, devoid of any warmth. Investments, she repeated. Is that what we are calling it now? I gripped the cold metal railing of the deck. What do you mean? Oh, please. Mia, I am not Tom. I do not have his willful blindness. Do you think I do not notice things? I noticed your shoes at Thanksgiving last year. They were last season's Gucci. Resoled. I noticed that you stopped going to the stylist in Greenwich and started coloring your own hair. I can see the box dye tint in the sunlight. Darling, it is brassy. My hand flew to my hair, instinctively. My face burned hot in the freezing air. We are just being smart with our money, I said, my voice trembling. Smart? Evelyn's voice dropped an octave. It became a whisper, intimate and cruel. Smart is not buying things you cannot afford. Smart is not accepting a $1,600 device for your child when you cannot even scrape together $3,000 to help family. It was a gift. You said it was a gift. It was a test. Evelyn snapped. And you failed. I wanted to see if you had any financial backbone. I wanted to see if my son's earnings were safe with you. Clearly, they are not. She took a breath and then delivered the final blow. You are a drain on him. Mia, you always have been. A little freelance artist with big dreams and empty pockets. And now you are teaching my grandson to be a charity case. I felt tears pricking my eyes. The injustice of it choked me. I am not a charity case. And Leo is your grandson. You gave him that iPad because you wanted to buy his affection, not because you care about him. How dare you? No. How dare you? Evelyn, you cannot ask for the money back. I will not give it to you. Not because I cannot, but because I will not play this game. I was lying again. I was wrapping my poverty in a cloak of righteousness. Fine, Evelyn said. Her voice was suddenly calm, terrifyingly calm. Keep the money, keep the iPad, but remember this conversation. Mia, when the house of cards falls down, and it will fall down, do not expect me to be there with a safety net. I will be there with a broom to sweep you into the dustpan. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it onto the patio pavers. I stood there for a long time, staring into the dark woods behind our house. My breath plumed out in white clouds before me. She knew. She did not know the specifics. She did not know about the secret credit cards or the personal loan, but she smelled the blood in the water. She knew I was weak. I walked back inside. The warmth of the house hit me, but it did not thaw the ice in my chest. I went upstairs. I paused outside Leo's room. The door was slightly ajar. I could see the blue glow of the iPad screen illuminating his face. He was asleep, the expensive device still clutched in his hands like a teddy bear. I walked in softly and gently pried it from his fingers. He stirred but did not wake. I looked at the device. It was sleek, heavy, and beautiful. It was a marvel of technology. To Leo, it was a toy. To Evelyn, it was a weapon. But as I stood there in the dark, turning the iPad over in my hands, a dark thought began to take root in my mind. A thought born of desperation and panic. It was not a toy or a weapon. It was an asset. I needed $3,000. No, I needed more than that. The minimum payments were due on Friday. The electric bill was past due. I needed cash to keep the lights on. Literally, I looked at the Apple logo on the back. $1,600. If I sold it, I could pay the minimums. I could buy myself another month of silence. I could tell Leo, "서유증 2# is greater than I could tell him it broke. I could tell him it had a virus. I could tell him anything. He was 7. He trusted me. The thought made me sick. I was a mother. Mothers protect their children. They do not steal from them. But then I thought about what would happen if the lights went out. I thought about what would happen if Tom found the letters from the collection agency I had hidden in the trunk of my car. If Tom found out, he would leave me. He would take Leo, and Evelyn would win. I could not let Evelyn win. I walked out of the room, clutching the iPad to my chest. I went into my bedroom and hid it under a pile of sweaters in the back of my closet. Tom was already asleep, snoring softly. He looked peaceful. He had no idea that his wife was standing 5 feet away, contemplating a theft that would destroy his son's heart. I crawled into bed next to him, but I stayed on the very edge of the mattress. I stared at the ceiling shadows. Just for a week, the voice in my head whispered, The voice was seductive. It sounded reasonable. Just pawn it for a week, pay the bills, get the next client check, then go back and get it. Leo will not even know it is gone. It was a lie. Another lie to add to the pile. But as I closed my eyes, it was the only lie that offered me a way out. The morning sun hit the kitchen counter with a brightness that felt accusatory. It was Wednesday, the day after the phone call with Evelyn, and the day the world decided to close in on me. I was standing by the coffee maker, watching the dark liquid drip into the carafe, when my cell phone began to vibrate against the granite. It was a low, persistent buzz that sounded like an angry hornet. I did not need to look at the screen to know who it was. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. This was when the robo-dialers started their shift. I picked it up, potential spam. I knew better. It was not spam. It was the collection agency for the Visa card I had maxed out 6 months ago to pay for the repaving of our driveway. A cosmetic necessity that Tom had insisted on, and which I had claimed to pay for with a bonus from a non-existent client. I let it go to voicemail. 10 seconds later, the house phone rang. The sound tore through the quiet house like a siren. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were getting aggressive. They were cross-referencing numbers. If Tom picked up the landline one evening and heard a recorded voice asking for Mia regarding a personal business matter, the game was over. I snatched the receiver from the wall cradle. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice tight. "Mrs. Mia Sterling? This is Mark from Client Services. We are attempting to collect a debt of Sayu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu." I hung up. I unplugged the phone line from the wall jack. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee mug. I needed $4,000 to bring the accounts current and stop the calls for another 30 days. I needed it today. I looked into the living room. Leo was sitting on the beige sectional sofa, his legs dangling off the edge. He was completely absorbed in the iPad. The screen cast a pale, artificial light onto his small, innocent face. He was playing a building game, constructing a digital castle with focused intensity. He loved that thing. It was the first time in months I had seen him so quiet. It's so content. I felt a wave of nausea roll through my stomach. I was about to do something unforgivable. I was about to become the villain in my own son's life. "Leo, honey?" I called out. He did not look up. "Just a minute." "Mom, I am placing the roof." I walked over to him. The carpet felt like quicksand under my feet. I sat down next to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. He leaned into my touch, trusting and warm. That trust felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "Leo, I need to see the iPad for a second." Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than... I got an email from Grandma Evelyn. She said there is a software update that we need to install. If we do not do it, the screen might freeze up. You do not want it to break, do you? The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. It was smooth, practiced, and vile. Leo frowned, looking up at me with his big, brown eyes. "It works fine." "Mom, look." He swiped across the screen. The animation was fluid and perfect. "I know, sweetie, but these things are tricky. It happens on the inside first. I need to take it to the Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than the Apple Store, just to have them run a diagnostic." "A diagnostic? A checkup? Like when you go to the doctor?" Leo clutched the device to his chest. "How long will it take?" I forced myself to maintain eye contact. I forced a smile that I prayed looked reassuring. "Not long, maybe a few days. I will bring it back as soon as it is fixed. I promise." He hesitated. I could see the internal struggle, the reluctance to part with his new treasure. But he was 7 years old. He still believed that adults knew best. He still believed that his mother would never lie to him. "Okay," he whispered. He handed me the iPad. The metal casing was warm from his hands. It felt heavy, heavier than 16 ounces of aluminum and glass should feel. It felt like I was holding the weight of my own failures. "You are a good boy, Leo. Go play with your Legos." "Okay." I stood up and walked away before my resolve could crumble. I went into the kitchen, grabbed the original white box from the recycling bin where I had hidden it, and slid the device inside. It fit perfectly. It looked brand new. I put on my coat, grabbed my purse, and walked out the door. I told myself I was doing this for him. I told myself I was saving our family. I was lying to myself, too. The drive from Westport to the city was a journey between two different worlds. I guided my sports utility vehicle down the tree-lined streets of our neighborhood, past the colonial houses with their 3-car garages and the perfectly trimmed boxwood hedges. Everything here screamed stability. Everything here whispered that life was safe, predictable, and funded by old money. But as I merged onto the interstate and headed south, the scenery began to decay. The trees gave way to concrete sound barriers. The luxury sedans were replaced by rusted work trucks. I was heading to a pawn shop I had found online. It was located in a strip mall in a rundown section of Bridgeport, nestled between a liquor store and a bail bondsman's office. I had chosen it because it was far enough away that I would never run into anyone I knew. No one from the Westport Parent-Teacher Association would be caught dead on this street. I parked the car in the cracked asphalt lot. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked out of place. My camel-colored wool coat, my leather bag, my diamond stud earrings. I looked like a target. I took off the earrings and put them in the center console. I pulled my hair back into a severe ponytail. I put on a pair of dark sunglasses. Even though it was overcast, I grabbed the white box and stepped out of the car. The air smelled of exhaust fumes and damp cardboard. A siren wailed in the distance. I clutched the box to my chest and walked quickly toward the shop. The sign above the door read, "Quick Cash Pawn in gold" in peeling yellow letters. I pushed the door open. A bell jingled, a cheerful sound that clashed violently with the interior. The shop was narrow and dimly lit. The air was thick with the smell of stale dust and cleaning chemicals. Along the walls, shelves were crammed with the detritus of other people's misfortunes. Power tools, musical instruments, mismatched jewelry, and rows of electronics that had once been someone's prized possession. A man stood behind a high counter, separated from the customers by a wall of bulletproof glass. He was heavy-set, with a thick gray beard and eyes that looked like they had seen every lie humanity had to offer. He did not look up from his magazine as I approached. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded thin and small in the cramped space. The man slowly lowered the magazine. He looked at me, taking in the coat, the bag, the nervous posture. He did not smile. "Buying or selling?" he asked. His voice was gravel. "Selling." Or "Sao yu jing hao ling." 2. Loaning. I am not sure yet. I placed the white box on the metal tray beneath the glass partition. He reached through the slot and pulled the box toward him. He opened it with practiced indifference. He took out the iPad, turned it over, and pressed the power button. The Apple logo lit up. "New model," he grunted. "Yes, it is brand new. My son, Sao Yiting Halin, 2# is greater than he did not want it." The lie slipped out automatically. The man did not care. He did not care about my son or my reasons. He only cared about the resale value. He tapped on the screen, checking the storage capacity, checking for scratches. "It is locked," he said. "You need to unlock it." "Oh, right." I typed in the passcode Leo had set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The innocence of the code made my chest ache. The man nodded. He typed something into his computer. "I can give you 400 for a loan. 600 if you sell it outright." I stared at him. I felt the blood drain from my face. 600? I stammered. "But, Saoyudzing Haling, 2 hash is greater than it costs $1,600 new." I just checked the receipt. "It is the Pro model with the cellular data." The man shrugged. He did not look sympathetic. "This is not the Apple store, lady. This is a pawn shop. I have to resell it. Electronics drop value the second you open the box. Plus, I got 3 of these in the back already." I felt panic rising in my throat. $600 was not enough. It was not even close to what I needed, but it was $600 more than I had right now. "Can you do 800? I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. "Please, I really need the cash." He looked at me again. He looked at the desperation in my eyes, the way my fingers were gripping the edge of the counter. He knew I was not just a bored housewife clearing out clutter. He knew I was in trouble. $650 to sell. That is my final offer. Take it or leave it. I looked at the iPad one last time. I thought about Leo's face when he opened it. I thought about Evelyn's smug voice on the phone. I wanted to see if you had any financial backbone. If I sold it, it was gone forever. I could never buy it back for $650. I would have to buy a new one for full price to replace it before Leo noticed. But if I pawned it, Saoyudzing Haling, 2 hash is greater than if I took the loan. Saoyudzing Haling, 2 hash is greater than I could come back. I could come back next week when a client invoice cleared. "How much for the loan?" I asked. 400. You have 30 days to pay it back with 20% interest. That is $480 to get it back. $400. It was a pittance. It would not cover the credit card minimums. It would barely cover the grocery bill, but it was a lifeline. "I will take the loan," I whispered. The man nodded. He pushed a clipboard through the slot. "Fill this out. Driver's license." I filled out the form. Name, address, phone number. I hesitated at the address. I did not want this place to have my real address. But he had my identification. I had no choice. I handed the clipboard back. He typed for a moment. Then the dot matrix printer groaned to life. He ripped off a pink slip of paper and handed it to me, along with a stack of $20 bills. "Do not lose the ticket," he said. "No ticket, no thing. And if you are 1 day late, I sell it." I took the money. It felt dirty in my hands. It felt like blood money. "Thank you," I said, though I did not know what I was thanking him for. I walked out of the shop and back into the gray daylight. The wind had picked up, whipping my hair around my face. I sat in my car and locked the doors immediately. I counted the money, $400. I stared at the dashboard. What had I done? I had just handed over my son's happiness for a handful of cash that would not even solve my problems. It was a stopgap, a bandage on a bullet hole. But then, a darker realization settled over me. Evelyn had asked for $3,000. I did not have it. The credit card company wanted $4,000. I did not have it. But now, I had $400 in cash. I could go to the grocery store. I could buy the expensive steaks Tom liked. I could buy a bottle of wine. I could buy the illusion that everything was fine for one more night. I started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked back at the shop. My son's iPad was in there, sitting on a dusty shelf behind bulletproof glass, next to a stranger's wedding ring and a stolen guitar. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and salty. I wiped it away angrily. There was no time for crying. I had a role to play. I drove back toward Westport, watching the landscape change from gray to green, from poverty to wealth. I felt like a spy returning from enemy territory, carrying a secret that could destroy everything. When I got home, the house was silent. Leo was at school. Tom was at work. I walked into the kitchen and placed the $400 in the tin jar where I kept the rainy day fund. It was not a rainy day fund anymore. It was a survival fund. My phone pinged. It was a text from Tom. "Hey babe, Mom just called. She said she is coming over this weekend. Saturday morning. She wants to see Leo using the new gadget. Make sure it is charged." I stared at the screen. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the floor. Saturday. Today was Wednesday. I had 3 days. I had 3 days to find $1,600 to redeem the iPad, or 3 days to come up with a lie so convincing that even Evelyn, with her hawk-like eyes and her suspicion, would believe it. I sank to the floor, my back against the cabinets, and for the first time in years, I let out a scream that no one was around to hear. The 3 days between Wednesday and Saturday did not pass like normal time. They dissolved into a blur of frantic, nauseating panic. I lived those 72 hours in a state of suspended terror, like a person falling from a high building who has not yet hit the pavement. I tried everything to raise the money. I called 3 clients who owed me for logo designs, begging for early payment. But I was met with voicemails and automated replies about net 30 payment terms. I even listed my wedding dress on a resale site, snapping photos of the silk and lace in the guest room bathtub, hoping for a quick sale. But by Saturday morning, the dress was still listed, the clients had not paid, and the iPad was still sitting on a dusty shelf in Bridgeport. Saturday arrived with a mocking brightness. The sky was a piercing blue, the kind of autumn day that people in New England live for. But inside our house, the air was thick and stagnant. I spent the morning scrubbing. I cleaned the baseboards, polished the silver, and vacuumed lines into the carpet so straight they looked like they had been drawn with a ruler. If my life was falling apart, at least my house would look pristine when the executioner arrived. Tom was in the garage, blissfully unaware, tinkering with his golf clubs. Leo was in the living room watching cartoons, occasionally glancing at the empty spot on the coffee table where his new prize should have been. Every time he looked, my heart stuttered. "She is here," Tom yelled from the garage. I froze. I was in the kitchen, arranging a platter of artisanal cheeses I had bought with the pawn shop money. It was a pathetic offering, a bribe for a judge who had already written the verdict. I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway, then the slam of a car door. I wiped my damp palms on my apron and walked to the front door. I forced my face into a mask of welcoming warmth. I opened the door just as Evelyn was reaching for the bell. "Mia," she said. She did not smile. She did not offer a hug. She swept past me into the foyer, bringing with her a gust of cold air and the scent of expensive Chanel perfume. She was wearing a camel hair coat that probably cost more than my car, and her gray hair was coiffed into a helmet of perfection. "Hello, Evelyn," I said to her back. "Thank you for coming." She ignored me. Her eyes were scanning the hallway, the living room, checking for dust, checking for imperfections. "Where is my grandson?" she asked. In the living room? I said. She walked in, and her demeanor transformed instantly. The ice melted into a sugary, theatrical warmth. Leo, my darling boy. Grandma. Leo jumped off the couch and ran to her. She knelt down, risking the knees of her tailored trousers, and engulfed him in a hug. It looked like a scene from a greeting card commercial, but I stood in the doorway, watching her hands grip his shoulders a little too tightly. Look at you, she cooed. You are getting so tall. I brought you something. She reached into her oversized designer tote bag and pulled out a bag of gourmet chocolates. Leo's eyes widened. Thanks, Grandma. And, she continued, standing up and smoothing her coat, I brought something else. Something digital. My stomach dropped. Here it was. I bought a subscription to a coding app for children, she said, looking directly at me. It teaches them how to build their own games. It is very advanced. I want to install it on your new iPad right now so we can do the first lesson together. Go get it. Leo. The room seemed to tilt. I stepped forward, my legs feeling like lead. Actually, Evelyn, I said, my voice sounding too high, too brittle. He cannot use it right now. Evelyn turned her head slowly to look at me. Her expression was one of polite confusion, but her eyes were sharp as razors. And why is that? She asked. Leo looked at me, then at his grandmother. Mom took it to the doctor, he said helpfully. The doctor? Evelyn repeated. The Apple Store. I corrected quickly. I stepped between her and Leo, as if I could physically shield him from the truth. It was acting up. The screen was freezing. I took it in for a diagnostic check on Wednesday. They said they needed to keep it for a few days to run some tests. I held my breath. It was a plausible lie. Technology fails. It happens. Evelyn stared at me. She did not blink. She stood perfectly still in the center of my living room, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. That is unfortunate, she said. Yeah, Tom said, walking in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He kissed his mother on the cheek. Hey, Mom. Yeah. Mia told me it was glitching. Bad luck, right? Especially for the top-of-the-line model. Evelyn looked at Tom, then back at me. A small, tight smile played on her lips. Very bad luck indeed, she said. Which Apple Store did you take it to? Mia? The one at the mall? Yes, I lead. The one at the Trumbull Mall. That is strange, Evelyn said softly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her iPhone. It was the latest model, encased in leather. She tapped the screen a few times with a manicured fingernail because, she continued, her voice light and conversational. When I set up the iPad for Leo, I enabled the family sharing plan, and I turned on location services. You know, for safety, in case it got lost or stolen. My blood ran cold. I felt a ringing in my ears. She turned her phone around so the screen faced us. So, Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr. Can you explain to me why the Apple Store in Trumbull appears to be located in a strip mall in Bridgeport? I looked at the screen. A small blue dot was pulsing on the map. It was not at the mall. It was miles away, deep in the south end of the city. Right where Quick Cash Pond stood, the room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. What? Tom asked, frowning. He stepped closer to look at the phone. Let me see that. He squinted at the map. That is, Saoudinghaling. 2# is greater than that, is downtown Bridgeport. He said, that is not the mall. Mia? I could not speak. My throat had closed up. I felt naked, exposed, stripped of every defense I had constructed. Evelyn looked at me. There was no anger in her face. There was something far worse, triumph. She looked like a cat that had finally cornered the mouse it had been chasing for years. Bridgeport, Evelyn mused. Specifically, the corner of Maine and State. I looked it up on Google Maps before I came inside. Do you know what is on that corner? Tom? Tom shook his head. Confused? No. What? A pawn shop. Evelyn whispered. Tom froze it. He turned to look at me. His face was a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. A pawn shop? He repeated. Mia? Why is Leo's iPad at a pawn shop? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I say? I sold it to pay for the groceries. I sold it to pay the debt you do not know about? Mia, Tom's voice rose, cracking with disbelief. Did you pawn my son's gift? Sao Jing Hao Ling, due cancelletto e maggiore di. Sao Jing Hao Lin. 2. I stammered. I intended to get it back. It was just for a few days. I just needed Sao Jing Hao Ling. Jing Hao Da Yu. Needed what? Evelyn cut in. Her voice was sharp, slicing through my stammering like a scalpel. Needed cash? For what? Drugs? Gambling? Or are you just so incompetent with money that you have to sell your child's toys to buy milk? No, I cried. It is not like that. Then what is it like? Tom shouted. He was angry now. I had never seen him this angry. His face was red. You stole from him? You stole from Leo? Leo began to cry. He did not understand what was happening, but he understood the tone. He understood that his mother was the bad guy. Mom? Leo sobbed. You said it was at the doctor. You lied. The sound of my son's voice broke me. I covered my face with my hands. I am sorry. I whispered into my palms. I am so sorry. Evelyn stepped forward. She placed a hand on Tom's arm. A gesture of comfort that looked more like restraint. Calm down, Thomas, she said soothingly. Do not scare the boy. She turned to me. She walked close, so close I could smell the mint on her breath. She leaned in, invading my personal space, forcing me to look at her. Her eyes were cold, dead things. I knew it. She whispered, so low that only I could hear. I knew you were trash wrapped in pretty paper. You just proved me right. She straightened up and turned to Tom. Thomas, take your son to the kitchen. Get him some ice cream. I need to speak with your wife. Alone. Tom looked at me with disgust. He grabbed Leo's hand. Come on, buddy, he said roughly. Let us go. He dragged a weeping Leo out of the room. I watched them go. Watched my husband and son walk away from me, leaving me alone with the monster in the designer coat. Evelyn waited until the kitchen door swung shut. Then she smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. A smile of pure satisfaction. You made this so easy, she said. I looked at her through my tears. Why are you doing this? I choked out. Why do you hate me? Hate you? Evelyn laughed softly. I do not hate you. Mia, you are not important enough to hate. You are just an obstacle between me and my family. And now, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, Jing Hao Da Yu. She tapped her phone against her palm. Now I have the leverage to remove you. She walked over to the sofa and sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. Sit down, Mia, she commanded. We are going to have a talk about the future, and I suggest you listen very carefully, because right now, I am the only one who can keep you out of jail. I stared at her. Jail? Technically, stealing property and selling it is a crime, she said breezily. And since I have the receipt proving I bought it, and the tracking data proving you took it, Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2 hashes greater than well. It does not look good for you, does it? I sank into the armchair opposite her. I felt small. I felt defeated. The walls of the room seemed to be closing in, shrinking down until there was no air left to breathe. The golden cage had just been locked, and Evelyn held the only key. The drive to Evelyn's estate in the Hamptons was a 2-hour funeral procession. The silence in our Audi was absolute. Tom drove with a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the gray stretch of Interstate 95. He had not spoken to me since the incident in the living room 3 days ago. He had slept in the guest room, leaving me alone in our marital bed to stare at the ceiling and count the cracks in the plaster. Leo was in the back seat, wearing his Sunday best, a miniature version of his father in a navy blazer and khaki pants. He was quiet, too, sensing the radioactive tension radiating from the front seats. He did not have his iPad. It was still in the pawn shop. I had not been able to redeem it. We were going to Thanksgiving dinner. It was a mandatory summons. After Evelyn had cornered me in my living room, she had made it very clear. Attend the dinner. Play the role of the happy family, or I hand the evidence of theft to the police and to the Child Protective Services. I was a hostage in a silk dress. Evelyn's house was not really a house. It was a compound, a sprawling, shingle-style mansion that sat on 3 acres of prime oceanfront property, surrounded by high hedges that screamed, "Keep out to the common world." As we pulled into the circular driveway, crunching over white gravel imported from Italy, I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost opened the car door to be sick. The driveway was already full of luxury sedans, Mercedes, BMWs, a vintage Jaguar. The sharks had gathered. We walked up the stone steps. The door opened before we even knocked. It was Evelyn. She was wearing a floor-length dress of deep crimson velvet, looking like a queen who had just bathed in the blood of her enemies. "Happy Thanksgiving," she proclaimed, throwing her arms open. She hugged Tom. She hugged Leo, squeezing him tight. "And Mia," she said, her voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze water. "You look, Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2 hashes greater than tired." "I have not been sleeping well," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Guilt does that to a person," she murmured, smiling for the benefit of the guests behind her. "Come in. Everyone is dying to see you." The dining room was a masterpiece of intimidation. A long mahogany table was set for 20 people. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, casting a prism of light over the fine china and the polished silverware. The centerpiece was an elaborate arrangement of autumn flowers and cornucopias that probably cost more than my first car. The guests were Evelyn's circle. There was Judge Holloway, a retired family court judge with a face like a bulldog. There was Mrs. Vanderwall, who sat on the board of the hospital. There were cousins and business partners of Tom's late father. They were people with money, influence, and very long memories. I took my seat next to Tom. He shifted his chair slightly away from me, a subtle rejection that felt like a slap. The dinner began. Servants moved silently around the table, pouring wine and serving courses: butternut squash soup, roasted quail. The conversation flowed around me, touching on the stock market, the sailing season, and the recent charity gala. I sat there, picking at my food, feeling like an imposter. I was a fraud in a room full of titans. I kept catching Evelyn's eye. She sat at the head of the table, presiding over the feast. She was drinking wine, her cheeks flushing slightly, her eyes bright and manic. She looked like she was waiting for something. And then, just as the main course, a massive, golden roasted turkey was being carved, she tapped her crystal glass with a silver spoon. Ting, ting, ting. The room went silent. 20 faces turned toward her. "I would like to propose a toast," Evelyn said. Standing up, she held her wine glass aloft. The crimson liquid caught the light. "To family," she began. "To the bonds that hold us together, even when the world tries to tear us apart. To honesty, to integrity." Everyone murmured. "To family." I raised my glass, my hand trembling, but I did not drink. "And," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "I want to say how grateful I am to have my son, Thomas, and my grandson, Leo, here today. You two are my world. You are the legacy of the sterling name." She paused. She looked down at the table, seemingly overcome with emotion. Then she looked up, and her eyes locked onto mine. "However," she said, her tone shifting into a somber, sorrowful register, "there is a shadow over our table today, a heavy heart that I can no longer hide." The room grew very still. Tom stiffened beside me. "What is it, Mom?" he asked. Evelyn let out a long, shuddering sigh. She looked at the guests, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I did not want to bring this up," she said. "I tried to handle it privately, but the situation has become Saoyuting. Tuhash is greater than critical, and we are all family here. We all care about Thomas and Leo." She reached under the table and pulled out a manila envelope. She placed it on the white tablecloth. "Mia," she said softly. I froze it. The blood drained from my face. "What are you doing?" I whispered. Evelyn ignored me. She addressed the room. "My daughter-in-law has been struggling," she said. "We have all seen the signs. The distance, the anxiety, the erratic behavior. But I did not realize how deep the rot went until this week." "Mom, do not," Tom said, but his voice was weak. He was looking at the envelope. "I sent a gift to my grandson," Evelyn continued. "An educational tool, an iPad. It was meant to help him learn. But 3 days ago, I discovered that Mia had taken it from the child." She paused for effect. "She took it to a pawn shop in Bridgeport," she said, her voice filled with a fake, tragic horror. "She sold her own son's gift for cash." A gasp went around the table. Mrs. Vanderwall covered her mouth with a napkin. Judge Holloway frowned, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. "That is not true." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I did not sell it. I just... Saoyuting. Tuhash is greater than I borrowed against it. I was going to get it back." Evelyn looked at me with pity. Pity that was designed to destroy. "Oh, Mia," she said soothingly. "Sit down. You are making a scene. We know why you did it." She opened the envelope. She pulled out a stack of papers. "I did some digging," she said, "because I was worried. I was worried about what kind of trouble could force a mother to steal from her child. And I found this." She slid a piece of paper down the table toward Tom. It was a credit report. My credit report. Tom picked it up. His hands were shaking. He scanned the document. His eyes grew wide. "Mia?" he whispered. I could not breathe. The room was spinning. $42,000. Evelyn announced to the room. Her voice was no longer sad. It was clinical. $42,000 in secret credit card debt. high interest loans, accounts in default. She looked at the guests. We suspect it is gambling, she said, or perhaps a shopping addiction. We are not sure yet, but it is a sickness that is destroying my son's financial future and endangering my grandson's welfare. It is not gambling, I screamed. I felt tears streaming down my face. It was for the house. It was for the groceries. It was for the life you people expect us to live. Tom slammed the paper down on the table. The sound made the silverware jump. You lied to me, he shouted. He turned to me, his face twisted in a mixture of rage and betrayal. You told me we were fine. You told me you were handling the budget. $40,000. Mia? How is that even possible? Tom, please, listen to me. Xiao Jinghaoling. 2 hash is greater than I reached for his arm. He recoiled as if I had burned him. Do not touch me, he spat. Evelyn watched us. She was not crying anymore. She was watching the destruction she had orchestrated with the calm satisfaction of an architect watching a building collapse exactly as planned. This is why I had to speak up, Evelyn said. She looked at Judge Holloway. Judge, you know the law. When a parent is this unstable, Xiao Jinghao Ling, 2 hash is greater than when they are financially reckless to the point of theft. Xiao Jinghao Ling, 2 hash is greater than what happens to the child? The judge cleared his throat. He looked at me with cold, professional assessment. It is grounds for concern, he said deeply. The court would look very unfavorably on a parent who misappropriates a child's property to fund. Xiao Jinghao Ling, 2 hash is greater than illicit debts. It questions the fitness of the mother. Fitness? I choked out. I am a good mother. I love Leo. A good mother does not pawn her son's happiness. Evelyn cut in sharply. She walked around the table. She came to stand behind Tom's chair. She placed her hands on his shoulders, claiming him. Thomas, she said softly, you cannot let her drag you down. You cannot let her drag Leo down into this sewer of debt and deceit. I will help you. I will pay off the debts. I will clean up this mess. Tom looked up at his mother. He looked broken. He looked like a little boy who had scraped his knee and needed mommy to fix it. You would do that? He asked. Of course, Evelyn said, but there are conditions. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. Mia cannot have access to any money, she said. No credit cards, no bank accounts. I will manage the family finances from now on. And Xiao Jinghaoling, our Jinghao Dayu. She paused, and I think it is best if Leo stays with me for a while, just until Mia gets Xiao Jinghaoling. 2 hash is greater than help. Until she goes to therapy for her addiction. Take my son, I whispered. The words felt like stones in my mouth. It is for his own safety, Evelyn said. I looked at Tom. I begged him with my eyes. Defend me, please. Tell her she is crazy. Tom looked away. He looked at the tablecloth. Maybe, Xiao Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than maybe mom is right. Mia, he mumbled, you clearly have a problem. I did not know it was this bad. Maybe you need a break. The betrayal hit me physically. It felt like a punch to the solar plexus. My husband, the man I had shared a bed with for 10 years, was handing me over to the executioner. He was choosing his mother's money over his wife's dignity. I looked around the table. The guests were all watching me, some with pity, some with disgust. I was the entertainment. I was the train wreck. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was a quiet, internal fracture. The part of me that was the pleaser. The part of me that wanted to be the perfect wife. The perfect daughter-in-law simply died. It withered away and turned into ash. I stopped crying. I wiped my face with the linen napkin. I stood up straight. The room went quiet again. They expected me to scream. They expected me to beg. Instead, I looked at Evelyn, really looked at her. I saw the fear behind her eyes. The fear that she was not relevant. The fear that she was not in control. "You want my son?" I said. My voice was steady. It was cold. "I want to protect him," Evelyn corrected. "No," I said. "You want to own him, just like you own Tom. Just like you think you own everyone in this room because you bought the wine they are drinking." "Mia," Tom shouted. "Stop it." I turned to Tom. I looked him up and down, seeing him clearly for the first time. He was not a partner. He was a subsidiary of Evelyn Enterprises. "You are a coward." "Tom," I said softly, "and that is going to cost you more than $40,000. I grabbed my purse. "I am leaving," I announced. "You cannot leave," Evelyn said, her voice rising. "We have not had dessert, and we need to discuss the custody arrangement." "I am not discussing anything with you, Evelyn, not without a lawyer." "A lawyer?" Evelyn laughed. "With what money?" "Darling, you do not have a dime." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile that promised violence. "Then I guess I will have to get creative," I said. "After all, you said I was resourceful enough to find a pawn shop in Bridgeport. Let us see what else I can find." I turned and walked out of the dining room. "Mia," Tom called after me. "Mia, come back here." I did not stop. I walked out the heavy front door, down the stone steps, and onto the gravel driveway. The cold ocean air hit my face. It felt cleansing. I walked to the car, but then I realized Tom had the keys. I did not care. I started walking. I walked down the long driveway, past the Mercedes and the Jaguars, past the high hedges that blocked out the world. I was alone. I was broke. I was about to lose my son. But as I walked into the dark night, listening to the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, I felt something strange. I was not afraid anymore. Fear is for people who have something to lose. I had just lost everything, and that made me dangerous. The walk down the driveway in the Hamptons did not last long. The cold ocean wind had cut through my silk dress like a knife, numbing my skin, but it was nothing compared to the numbness spreading through my chest. I had walked perhaps a quarter of a mile when the Audi pulled up beside me. The passenger window rolled down with a smooth mechanical hum. "Get in," Tom said. He did not look at me. He looked straight ahead at the dark road, illuminated by the headlights. I considered keeping walking. I considered walking until I reached the highway, until I found a truck stop, until I disappeared into the anonymity of the night. But I had no money. I had no phone. I had left it on the dining table in my haste. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a son strapped into a booster seat in the back of that car. I opened the door and slid into the leather seat. The warmth of the climate control hit me, suffocating and artificial. In the back, Leo was silent. He was staring out the window, clutching a small toy car Evelyn had given him. He did not look at me. He had seen his mother branded a thief and a liar. And at 7 years old, he did not possess the nuance to understand desperation. He only understood rules. I had broken them. The drive back to Westport took 90 minutes. Not a single word was spoken. The silence was heavy, filled with the ghosts of everything we were not saying. It was the silence of a marriage dying on the asphalt of Interstate 95. When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked different. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow on the front door, but it felt like a stage set for a play that had been canceled. It was no longer my home. It was a holding cell. Tom killed the engine. Go upstairs. Leo, Tom said, his voice flat. Brush your teeth. Get in bed. I will be up to tuck you in. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt. He scrambled out of the car and ran into the house without glancing at me once. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the closed garage door. Get out, Tom said. I opened the door and stepped onto the concrete floor of the garage. My heels clicked loudly in the silence. I walked into the kitchen, and Tom followed close behind. I could feel his anger radiating off him, a heat wave of resentment. I went to the sink to fill a glass of water. My hands were shaking. Put it on the table, Tom said. I turned around. He was standing by the kitchen island, his hand extended, palm up. Put what? I asked, though I knew. Your wallet, he said, and your keys. Tom, please. I started, my voice cracking. Let us just sleep on this. We can talk in the morning when we are not. Xiao yu jing hao ling. Our jing hao da yu. We are done talking. Mia. His shout echoed off the marble countertops, violent and sudden. I flinched. Tom never yelled. Tom was the calm one, the rational one. Seeing him lose control was more terrifying than Evelyn's cold calculation. You lied to me for 2 years, he roared. He slammed his hand onto the island. $42,000? How do you even do that? How do you look me in the eye every day? How do you sleep next to me, knowing you are drowning us? It was not for me, I screamed back, the dam finally breaking. It was for this, all of this, the country club membership you insisted on keeping, the private tutors, the vacations to Martha's Vineyard because your mother said we had to keep up appearances. You could have told me. I could not tell you, because you would have run to her. You always run to her. Tom stared at me. His chest was heaving. The vein in his forehead was throbbing. Give me the wallet. Mia. Now. Or I call the police and report the theft of Leo's iPad. Do not test me. Mom was right. You are sick. The words hung in the air. Mom was right. The ultimate trump card. Slowly, with trembling fingers, I reached into my purse. I pulled out my wallet. I placed it on the counter. Tom snatched it up. He opened it and pulled out my debit card, my joint credit card, and the emergency card I had hidden in the secret compartment. He knew exactly where to look. Evelyn must have told him. He walked to the utility drawer and pulled out a pair of kitchen shears. Please, Tom, I whispered. Do not. That is my name on those cards. He did not hesitate. He cut through the plastic. Snap, snap, snap. The sound was visceral, like bones breaking. The pieces of plastic fell onto the counter. A confetti of my financial identity. He swept the pieces into his hand and threw them into the trash compactor. From now on, Tom said, his voice dropping to a cold, business-like tone, you have zero access to funds. I have already changed the passwords to the online banking. I have removed your name from the joint checking. You cannot do that. I said, that is illegal. Watch me, he said. You have proven you cannot be trusted. You are a financial liability until the debt is paid off. Mom is going to handle the books. I felt the blood drain from my face. Your mother? She offered to bail us out. Tom said, she is wiring $40,000 to the creditors on Monday to stop the interest from compounding. In exchange, she is taking over the household budget. You will get an allowance for groceries and gas. You will provide receipts for every penny. If you are off by $1, the allowance stops. I stared at him. He was not my husband anymore. He was his mother's proxy. You are making me a prisoner. I said, you made yourself a prisoner when you decided to lie, he retorted. He grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. And you are not driving the sports utility vehicle anymore. It guzzles too much gas. You can use the old Honda if you need to go somewhere essential. Otherwise, stay home. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. Where are you going? I asked. To sleep in the guest room. He said without looking back, I cannot look at you right now. I stood alone in the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I looked at the trash compactor where my independence lay in shreds. I looked at the empty spot on the counter where my keys used to be. I sank to the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest and wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my shattering world together. I did not cry. I was past crying. I sat there in the dark, shivering, until the sun began to rise over the manicured lawns of Westport. The weeks that followed were a blur of gray humiliation. I became a ghost in my own life. The house, once my pride and joy, became my cell. The walls seemed to close in a little more each day. The new system, implemented by Evelyn, was efficient and brutal. Every Sunday evening, she would come over for a budget meeting. She would sit at the head of my dining table, with Tom on her right, and I would sit opposite them like a delinquent child facing a disciplinary committee. She brought spreadsheets. She brought a red pen. Let us see. Evelyn said one Sunday in early December, she put on her reading glasses and peered at the stack of receipts I had submitted. Why did you buy the organic strawberries? Mia, she asked, looking over the rims of her glasses. Because Leo likes them, I said dully. Regular strawberries are $3 cheaper, Evelyn noted, making a mark with her red pen. We are in a debt crisis. We do not buy organic. That is a luxury for people who are solvent. It is $3. Evelyn, it adds up, she snapped. And what is this? CVS Pharmacy. $22? Feminine products, I said, my face burning. And shampoo? She scrutinized the receipt. You bought the Salon brand shampoo. Pantene is on sale this week. I saw it in the circular. Next time, check the coupons before you shop. I looked at Tom. He was studying the table surface, refusing to meet my eyes. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes told me he was stressed too, but his cowardice was stronger than his exhaustion. Tom, I said, are you going to let her dictate what tampon brand I buy? Tom Sihu, just do what she says. Mia, she is paying the bills. I am not an employee. I slammed my hand on the table. I am your wife. I am the mother of your child. You are a dependent, Evelyn corrected calmly. And right now, you are a very expensive one. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table. Here is the cash for next week. $150. That includes gas for the Honda. Do not come asking for more. I looked at the envelope. It was degrading. It was an allowance given to a teenager, not a grown woman. I did not touch it. Take it, Evelyn commanded, unless you want the fridge to be empty. I took it. I hated myself for it, but I took it. The worst part was not the money. It was Leo. Leo was drifting away from me. Children are like sponges. They absorb the atmosphere of the house. He felt the tension. He saw the way his father looked at me with disappointment. He saw the way his grandmother looked at me with disdain. He stopped showing me his drawings. He stopped asking me to read to him at night. Instead, He spent his evenings on FaceTime with Evelyn, using a new iPad she had kept at her house for him, playing the coding games she had bought. One afternoon, I came into the living room to find him building a Lego set. "Hey, buddy," I said, sitting on the floor. "Want some help?" He did not look up. "No thanks. Grandma said I should do it myself to learn focus." I flinched. "Leo," I said softly, "I know things are weird right now, but Mommy loves you. You know that, right?" He paused. He looked at me with a serious expression that looked too old for his face. "Daddy says you are sick," he said. My heart stopped. "What?" "Daddy told Grandma on the phone. He said you have a sickness in your head about money. That is why you sold my iPad." I felt like I had been punched. They were gaslighting my son. They were rewriting history to turn me into a villain in his eyes. "Leo, no, it is complicated. I made a mistake, but I am not sick. Grandma says people who steal are sick," he stated simply, then went back to his Legos. I stood up and walked out of the room before he could see me break down. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the shower so no one could hear me scream. I stood under the scalding water, scrubbing my skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of filth. I was losing him. They were taking him from me, inch by inch, word by word. The breaking point came 3 days before Christmas. I needed to buy a gift for Leo. I had saved $20 from the grocery allowance by skipping lunch for 2 weeks. I wanted to buy him a specific sketchbook he had eyed at the bookstore downtown. It was not much, but it would be from me, not from Evelyn's money. I drove the battered Honda to the bookstore. I found the sketchbook. It was perfect. I took it to the counter. The clerk, a cheerful teenage girl, rang it up. "That will be $18.50, she said. I opened my wallet. I counted the crumpled bills. 5, all, din, 15, so yiting ha ling. 2 hash is greater than, and 3 singles. $18. I dug into the coin purse. Quarters, Demis. I came up with 40 cents. I was 10 cents short. I looked at the clerk. I looked at the line of people behind me. "I am so sorry," I whispered. "I am 10 cents short. Can I?" "Sorry, Tsing Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than can I owe you? I come in here all the time." The girl's smile faltered. "I cannot, madam. The system will not let me close the transaction. Store policy." I felt the heat rising up my neck. I looked at the people behind me. A woman in a fur coat was checking her watch, tapping her foot impatiently. "Please," I begged. "It is for my son. I can void the transaction if you want to put it back," the girl offered. I stared at the sketchbook. It was just paper. It was just paper, but it represented the last shred of my ability to provide for my child. "No," I said, "I will. Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than I will go check my car for change." I grabbed my wallet and ran out of the store. I did not check the car. I knew there was no change. Evelyn made me account for every quarter. I sat in the front seat of the Honda and wept. I wept for the 10 cents. I wept for the sketchbook. I wept for the woman I used to be. The woman who had potential, who had dreams, who had dignity. That woman was dead. Evelyn had killed her. But as I sat there, wiping my snotty nose on my sleeve, a new feeling began to rise from the ashes of my despair. It was not sadness. It was not fear. It was rage. Cold, hard, crystalline rage. They wanted me to be a monster? Fine. I would be a monster, but I would not be the kind of monster that hides in the dark. I would be the kind that burns the village down. I wiped my face. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red. My hair was messy. And I looked 10 years older than I was. But I was still here. I started the car. I did not go home. Instead, I drove to the public library. I did not need money to enter the library. I went to the public computer terminals. I logged on. I began to search. I did not search for jobs. I did not search for divorce lawyers. I searched for Evelyn Sterling. I searched for public records. I searched for property tax liens. I searched for lawsuits. If she was going to audit my life down to the penny, it was time I returned the favor. I spent 4 hours there, and what I found in the deep archives of the county clerk's digitized records made my heart skip a beat. It was a small thing, a discrepancy in a property filing from 5 years ago, a notice of default that had been quietly settled, but then reopened. It was not a smoking gun yet, but it was a loose thread, and I was going to pull on it until her entire tapestry unraveled. I drove home in the dark. When I walked into the kitchen, Tom was eating takeout sushi. He did not offer me any. "Where were you?" he asked. "You exceeded the gas mileage limit for a grocery run." "I went to the library," I said calmly. "The library? What for?" "To read," I said. I grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. A non-organic apple. Knowledge is free. "Tom, it is the one thing your mother cannot put a price tag on." I took a bite of the apple and walked past him. Up the stairs. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel like a ghost. I felt like a hunter. The decision to leave did not happen with a bang. It happened with a whisper. It was the second week of January. The holiday decorations had been taken down, packed away in clearly labeled plastic bins by a cleaning crew Evelyn had hired because she did not trust me to handle the ornaments without breaking them. The house felt naked and sterile, stripped of its festive disguise, leaving only the cold, the hard architecture of my prison. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a stew, potatoes and carrots, the cheapest ingredients I could find to stay within the strict $50 weekly grocery limit. Tom and Evelyn were in the living room. They were drinking tea. I could hear the clinking of china cups against saucers, a delicate sound that made my teeth ache. They were talking about Leo. They were always talking about Leo now, as if he were a project to be managed rather than a child to be loved. "I think St. Ethelwold's is the best option," Evelyn was saying. Her voice carried easily through the open concept floor plan. "It is expensive, of course, roughly $60,000 a year, but the discipline is unmatched, and they have a wonderful preparatory program for the Ivy League." I paused, the knife hovering over a potato. St. Ethelwold's was a boarding school in Massachusetts. "He is 7, Tom said, but he did not sound opposed. He sounded thoughtful. "Is that too young for boarding?" "Nonsense," Evelyn replied. "I sent your brother away at 8. It made a man out of him. Besides, consider the environment here. Thomas, is it healthy for him? With Mia in this Lean Doi state, the tension is palpable. The boy needs stability. He needs to be away from the negative influence of a mother who cannot control her impulses." I set the knife down. The metal clattered against the cutting board. I walked into the living room. My hands were wet with potato starch. I wiped them on my jeans. "You are not sending my son to boarding school," I said. The room went silent. Evelyn looked up from her tea. Her expression mild, as if a servant had just interrupted a private conversation. "We are discussing options. Mia," she said, "this does not concern you. It concerns me. He is my son, and he is my grandson," Evelyn countered, her voice hardening. "And since I am the one paying the mortgage on this house, paying the credit card bills you racked up, and paying for the food in your stomach, I believe I have a vote. In fact, I believe I have the only vote that matters." I looked at Tom. He was studying his teacup, refusing to meet my gaze. He had become a ghost, a hollow shell of a man filled with his mother's poisonous will. "Tom," I said, my voice shaking, tell her we are not sending Leo away." Tom looked up. His eyes were empty. "It might be good for him." "Mia," he said softly, "just for a year or two, until you get back on your feet. Until this, 小玉静好令, 2 hashes greater than mess is cleaned up." The betrayal was absolute. It was not a heat of the moment anger. It was a cold, calculated abandonment. They were planning to excise me from my son's life surgically. "I am leaving," I said. Evelyn laughed. It was a short, sharp bark. "Do not be dramatic. Sit down and finish making dinner. You have nowhere to go. You have no money. You have no credit. You are completely dependent on us." "Not anymore," I said. I turned and ran up the stairs. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I burst into Leo's room. He was lying on his bed, reading a comic book. "Leo, grab your backpack," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Why? Where are we going?" "We are going on a trip. Just you and me. Grab your favorite toys. Hurry." I ran to the master bedroom. I grabbed a duffel bag and threw in clothes haphazardly. Jeans, sweaters, underwear. I did not care what matched. I just needed to get out. I grabbed my portfolio from the closet, the only thing I owned that was truly mine. I ran back to Leo's room. He was standing there, holding his backpack, looking confused and scared. "Mom, is Dad coming?" "No, baby, just us. Come on." We ran down the stairs. Evelyn and Tom were standing in the foyer now. Evelyn looked annoyed. Tom looked nervous. "Mia, put the bag down," Tom said. "You are acting crazy." "I am taking my son, and I am leaving," I said. I pushed past them toward the door. "You cannot take him," Evelyn shrieked. Her composure finally cracked. "That is kidnapping." "It is not kidnapping. I am his mother," I screamed back. I opened the front door. The cold winter air hit me. I dragged Leo toward the Honda. "Tom, stop her," Evelyn commanded. Tom stepped forward, grabbing my arm. "Mia, stop. You are not thinking straight. Where are you going to go?" I yanked my arm away with a strength I did not know I possessed. I looked him in the eye. "Anywhere but here. Tom, anywhere but here." I shoved Leo into the back seat and buckled him in. I jumped into the driver's seat and locked the doors just as Tom reached the handle. He banged on the glass. "Mia, open the door." I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered and roared to life. I threw it into reverse, backing out of the driveway so fast the tires screeched on the asphalt. I saw Evelyn standing on the porch. She was not chasing me. She was just watching, her phone already pressed to her ear. I knew who she was calling. She was not calling the police. She was calling her lawyer. My mother lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a crumbling brick building on the east side of Bridgeport. It was the kind of neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and the sidewalks were cracked by tree roots and neglect. It was 40 minutes away from the manicured lawns of Westport, but it felt like a different planet. My mother Linda was 60 years old and worked double shifts as a waitress at a diner. She opened the door, her face gray with exhaustion, a cigarette dangling from her lips. "Mia?" she asked, squinting through the smoke. "What are you doing here? I need a place to stay." "Mom?" I said, holding Leo's hand. "Just for a while." She looked at the duffel bag, then at Leo, then at me. She did not ask questions. She just stepped back and opened the door wider. "It is small," she said, "but the heat works. Most of the time, the apartment smelled of stale tobacco and boiled cabbage. The carpet was threadbare, and the furniture was mismatched, salvaged from thrift stores. It was a far cry from the colonial mansion with the quartz countertops, but as I sat on the lumpy sofa that night, watching Leo sleep on a makeshift bed of blankets on the floor, I felt a strange sense of relief. The air here was stale, but it was free. I was not being watched. I was not being audited, but the relief was short-lived. 2 days later, the knock came. It was a sharp, authoritative rap on the peeling paint of the door. It was 7 in the morning. My mother had already left for her morning shift. I was making instant oatmeal for Leo. I froze it. I knew that knock. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in a cheap suit was standing there. He held a thick manila envelope. I opened the door, a crack. "Mia Sterling," he asked. "You have been served." He shoved the envelope through the crack and walked away without looking back. I closed the door and locked it. My hands were trembling as I tore open the seal. It was a lawsuit. Superior Court of Connecticut, Family Division. Plaintiff, Evelyn Sterling. Defendant, Mia Sterling. Action, petition for third-party visitation and emergency custody. I scanned the legal jargon, my heart pounding in my ears. Grandparents' rights, unfit mother, financial instability, substance abuse allegations, and then a second document fell out, affidavit in support of emergency motion. I read the first paragraph. The defendant, Mia Sterling, has demonstrated a pattern of erratic behavior, financial dishonesty, and theft of the minor child's property, specifically an Apple iPad, serial number ending in 4921. To fund illicit gambling or drug debts, the plaintiff believes the minor child is in imminent danger of neglect. She had done it. She had weaponized the pawnshop receipt. Before I could even process the horror of the document, there was another knock on the door. This one was softer, but somehow more terrifying. I opened it. A woman stood there. She looked tired. She wore a lanyard around her neck with a state identification card. "Mrs. Sterling? I am Janice from the Department of Children and Families, or, as you might know it, Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding the welfare of your son, Leo." The room spun. I grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "A report?" I whispered. "Yes," Janice said, stepping into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. She looked around, her eyes scanning the peeling wallpaper, the overflowing ashtray my mother had left on the table, the sleeping bag on the floor. She took a notebook out of her pocket and made a note. "I need to inspect the premises," she said, "and I need to speak with Leo alone." "You cannot." Saotsing Haoling, 2# is greater than I started. If you refuse, I will have to call the police to enforce the order. Janice said calmly, "It is better if you cooperate." I stepped back. I felt like I was drowning. Janice walked through the tiny apartment. She opened the refrigerator. It was half empty. containing only a carton of milk, some eggs, and the instant oatmeal. She made a note. She walked into the bathroom. She checked the medicine cabinet. She made a note. She looked at the sleeping arrangements. "Does the child not have a bed?" she asked. "We just got here." I stammered. "It is temporary. We are sleeping on the floor until I can get a mattress." She nodded, her face unreadable. "Lack of suitable sleeping arrangements," she muttered as she wrote. She sat down with Leo. Leo was terrified. He sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching his knees. "Hi, Leo," Janice said gently. "Do you feel safe here?" Leo looked at me. Then he looked at the strange woman. "I miss my room," he whispered. "I miss my dad." Janice wrote it down. "Has your mommy ever Saoyuting Haoling, 2 hashes greater than hurt you? Or taken your things?" Leo looked down at his hands. "She took my iPad," he said softly. "She said it was at the doctor, but it was not." I closed my eyes. That was it. The nail in the coffin. Janice finished her interview. She stood up and turned to me. "Mrs. Sterling, this environment is Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than concerning. The allegations in the report, combined with the current living conditions, raise some red flags. I am a good mother," I cried. "I left an abusive situation. That is for the court to decide." Janice said, "Right now, I am not removing the child, but I am opening an active investigation. You will need to attend a hearing on Friday, and I strongly suggest you improve these living conditions immediately. If I come back and find him sleeping on the floor again, I will have to place him in foster care." She handed me a card and left. I stood in the silence of the apartment. I looked at the lawsuit in one hand and the Child Protective Services card in the other. Evelyn had not just sued me, she had declared nuclear war. The next morning, I sat in the waiting room of the Bridgeport Legal Aid office. The room was crowded with people who looked like me, tired, desperate, and poor. Babies were crying. A television in the corner was blaring a daytime talk show. I waited for 3 hours. Finally, a clerk called my name. "Mia Sterling." I followed her into a small, windowless office. A young man sat behind a desk, piled high with files. He looked like he had not slept in a week. His tie was loose, and he had a coffee stain on his shirt. "I am David," he said, not looking up from the file. "I am your public defender for the family court hearing." He flipped through the papers I had brought. The lawsuit, the Child Protective Services report, the affidavit. He let out a low whistle. "This is heavy," he said. "Grandparents' rights is a tough statute in Connecticut, but usually it is hard to win unless the parents are unfit." "I am not unfit," I said. David looked at me. He looked at the pawnshop receipt copy that Evelyn had attached to the lawsuit. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, his voice dropping, "you pawned your son's property. You have $40,000 in hidden debt. You fled the marital home to live in a substandard apartment with no bed for the child." He leaned back in his chair. "Your mother-in-law has hired Garrison and Associates. They are the sharks of family law. They charge $800 an hour. I have 50 cases this week alone." "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I am saying that on paper, you look bad," David said bluntly. "You look like a woman spiraling out of control. And judges? They hate instability. They hate financial deceit. And they really hate it when mothers sell their kids toys." "But she is lying," I said. "She trapped me. She cut off my money. Can you prove it?" David asked. "Do you have emails, texts, recordings of her saying she would cut you off?" I thought back. The conversations had been in person. or over the phone. I had nothing written down. No, I whispered. Then it is he said, she said. David Sehill. And she is a pillar of the community with a multi-million-dollar estate. And you are Sao Yuting Ha Ling. 2 hash is greater than well. You are here. He rubbed his eyes. Here is the reality. Mia, if we go into that courtroom on Friday, there is a very high chance the judge will grant temporary custody to the father. And since the father is living with the grandmother, Evelyn wins. I felt the tears sliding down my cheeks. So that is it? I lose my son because I am poor? David looked at me with a flicker of sympathy. In America? Yes. Being poor is often treated as a crime in family court. He leaned forward. Unless Sao Yuting Ha Ling, 2 hash is greater than he said. Unless what? Unless you can prove that she is unfit. Unless you can prove that staying in that house is more dangerous for the child than staying here. Do you have anything on her? Anything at all? I thought about the library. I thought about the discrepancy in the property records. The secret I had found, but had not fully understood yet. I said slowly, I found something about her finances. David shrugged. Her finances do not matter unless they affect the kid. Being broke is not illegal for her, only for you. Apparently, but if you can find evidence of fraud or something that proves she is lying to the court, that is a game changer. He checked his watch. I have another client in 5 minutes. Here is my advice. Do not miss the hearing. Get a bed for the kid, even if it is an air mattress. And if you have dirt on the grandmother, I dig it up fast, because right now, you are bringing a knife to a gunfight. I walked out of the legal aid office into the gray sleet of the city. The cold wetness soaked through my coat, but I did not feel it. I felt a coldness that was much deeper. I walked to the public library. I had 4 days until the hearing, 4 days to save my son. I sat down at the computer terminal. I pulled up the file I had found before. Sterling Family Trust. Bankruptcy filing 2019. Dismissed. Mortgage deed. 124 Ocean Drive. Assignment of leases and rents. I started reading. I read every line of the legal jargon. And slowly, the picture began to form. Evelyn was not just broke, she was a criminal. She had been using the trust fund money that was legally designated for Tom and Leo, to pay off her own gambling debts. She had leveraged the house 3 times. She was running a Ponzi scheme with her own family's inheritance. And the $3,000 she had asked me, it was not for a pool heater. I found a lien from a Vinnie's Pool and Spa filed against her property. But when I searched the business address for Vinnie's Pool and Spa, it was not a pool company. It was a betting parlor in Atlantic City. My heart began to race. This was it. She was not suing me because she cared about Leo. She was suing me because she needed control. She needed to control Tom's finances to keep her scheme afloat. If I divorced Tom and demanded half the assets, her house of cards would crumble. She needed me out of the picture, stripped of credibility, so she could keep draining the accounts dry. I printed the pages. The printer hummed, a sound like a weapon charging up. I had the gun now, but I needed one more thing. I needed a confession. Papers were good, but a jury, or a judge, needed to hear the voice of the devil herself. I looked at my phone. It was a cheap, prepaid burner phone I had bought at the corner store. I dialed a number, not Tom's, not Evelyn's. I dialed the home landline. I knew Evelyn would be there. It was tea time. I needed her to gloat. I needed her to admit it. And this time, I would be recording. The phone in my hand felt heavy, but I did not make the call. Not yet. I lowered the burner phone and stared at the glowing screen. A recording of Evelyn acting superior would not be enough. A judge might dismiss it as a family squabble. I needed something concrete. I needed a bullet that could pierce through layers of lawyers and social standing. I needed Sarah, but before I could fight back, I had to survive the avalanche that Evelyn had triggered. The next morning, the fallout began. It did not start with a bang, but with a series of quiet, digital explosions. I was sitting on the floor of my mother's apartment, using the sluggish Wi-Fi to check my email, expecting to see messages from recruiters or freelance clients. Instead, I found that my inbox was a graveyard. 3 clients, small business owners in Westport who had been my bread and butter, had sent terse, identical emails terminating our contracts. They cited conflicting values or reputation management. I logged onto social media. It was a mistake. The local Westport Moms Facebook group, a digital coliseum where reputations were built and destroyed over latte preferences, was buzzing. A thread had been started anonymously. Does anyone have a recommendation for a graphic designer? We used to use Mia Sterling, but after hearing about the theft issues and the addiction problems, we just cannot take the risk. So sad to see a mother fall so low. The comments were a shark's feeding frenzy. I heard she pawned her son's Christmas gifts for drugs. I heard she was escorted out of the Sterling estate by security. Poor Evelyn. She is such a saint for taking in the husband and child. I always knew there was something off about her. She never wore the right shoes. I sat there, reading the dissection of my character. These were women I had had coffee with. Women I had hosted for playdates. They did not know the truth, and they did not care. The rumor was juicier than the reality. Evelyn had poisoned the well so thoroughly that I would die of thirst before I could even try to drink from it. My chest tightened. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my lungs. In their eyes, I was not a victim of financial abuse. I was a unstable junkie who stole from a child. I closed the laptop. I wanted to vomit. I looked at Leo. He was sleeping on the air mattress I had bought with the last of my cash. He looked peaceful, unaware that his mother was currently the pariah of Fairfield County. I could not let them win. I put on my coat. I tied my hair back. I looked in the cracked mirror in the hallway. I looked tired. I looked poor. But under the exhaustion, there was a hardness that had not been there before. I left Leo with my mother, who was watching game shows and smoking out the window. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To the bank." I said, I did not go to my bank. I had no accounts left. I drove the rattling Honda to a Starbucks on the border of Westport and Norwalk. It was neutral ground. I sat in the corner, nursing a black coffee I had paid for with loose change. I waited. 10 minutes later, Sarah walked in. Sarah was my one connection to the old life who had not blocked my number. She was a risk analyst for a major investment bank in Stamford. We had bonded years ago over our shared hatred of the Parent-Teacher Association's mandatory fundraising galas. She looked nervous. She kept checking her watch, glancing at the door as if she expected the secret police to burst in. "Mia," she whispered, sliding into the seat opposite me. "You look so yu jinghaoling. Jinghao dayu." "Like hell," I supplied. I was going to say stressed. She corrected gently. She did not take off her coat. She wanted this to be quick. "Did you bring it?" I asked. Sarah hesitated. She looked around the coffee shop. "Mia, if anyone finds out I did this, I lose my job. I lose my license. This is highly illegal. Sarah, please." I am losing my son on Friday. Evelyn has a team of lawyers who are going to paint me as a criminal. I need to know if I am crazy. I found public records, but I need to know what they mean. Sarah Sehil. She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a plain manila folder. She slid it across the table, keeping her hand over it. I ran a background check, she said, her voice barely audible. Not a standard one, a deep dive, the kind we do for high net worth clients, applying for 8-figure loans. And Evelyn Sterling is a fraud, Sarah whispered. I felt a jolt of electricity run through me. Tell me, I said. Sarah opened the folder, just enough for me to see the spreadsheets inside. The Sterling Family Trust? It has been empty since 2019. The money is gone. Where did it go? Casinos, Sarah said. Atlantic City, Mohegan Sun, Vegas. She tapped a line on the paper. She has a line of credit with 3 major casinos. She is categorized as a whale. That is the term for a high roller who loses big. She has lost over $4 million in the last 5 years. 4 million. I repeated. The number was staggering. But how does she still have the house? The cars, smoke, and mirrors. Sarah explained. She is refinancing the estate every 6 months. She uses the loan money to pay the interest on the previous loans and to maintain the lifestyle. It is a classic Ponzi scheme, but she is the only investor and the only victim. Or she was, until she ran out of equity. Sarah flipped the page. That is where you and Tom come in. She needs Tom's income. She needs control of his salary to service the debt on the house. If Tom leaves, or if you take half the marital assets in a divorce, the house gets foreclosed on. She will be homeless. I stared at the numbers, the red ink, the dates, the $3,000 she asked for. Saoyu Tsing Ha Ling. 2 hash is greater than I realized aloud. She was likely covering a marker. Sarah said, a gambling debt. If she did not pay, they would have sent someone to collect, and not a lawyer. It all made sense. The control, the obsession with penny pinching on groceries while she bought Chanel coats, the desperation to keep Tom under her thumb. She was not trying to teach me a lesson. She was trying to survive. She was a drowning woman climbing on top of her son and daughter-in-law to keep her head above water. And the lawsuit? I asked. The grandparents' rights? It is a stalling tactic. Sarah guessed. She needs Leo. If she has custody of the child, she can claim child support from the state. Or more likely, she can use Leo as an anchor to keep Tom in the house. If you take Leo and leave, Tom might follow. She cannot risk that. I took the folder. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with fury. Can I keep this? I asked. Sarah nodded. I redacted my name and the bank's watermarks. It is just raw data now, but it is accurate. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Be careful. Mia, a woman like that. Saoyu Tsing Ha Ling. 2 hash is greater than a narcissist who is backed into a corner. She is dangerous. She has nothing left to lose. I looked at the folder. Neither do I. I said. Sarah left. I sat there for a long time, staring at the evidence of Evelyn's ruin. The public fallout, the rumors, the sneers from the Westport moms. It was all a distraction. Evelyn was projecting. She called me a thief because she was the biggest thief of all. She called me an addict because she could not face her own reflection in the mirror. I left the coffee shop. The wind was biting, but I walked with a new purpose. I drove back to Bridgeport. I stopped at a copy center. I made 3 copies of the file. 1 for David, my lawyer. 1 to hide in my mother's apartment, and 1 to keep in my bag. Then, I did something I had not done in months. I turned on my main phone, the one Tom paid for, the one I had turned off to avoid the harassing texts. It buzzed instantly. Dozens of notifications. Text from Tom. Where are you? Mom is freaking out. Child Protective Services is calling her. Text from Tom. Just come home. Mia, we can work this out. Mom says she will drop the lawsuit if you sign a postnuptial agreement. I stared at the screen. Postnuptial agreement. She wanted me to sign away my rights to Tom's assets. She wanted to lock me out legally so she could drain him dry without my interference. I did not reply. Instead, I opened the contact for Evelyn Sterling. I pressed the call button. She answered on the first ring. I hope you are calling to surrender, she said. Her voice was crisp, arrogant, untouched by the reality that was about to crash down on her. I am calling to talk. Evelyn, I said calmly, there is nothing to talk about. See you in court on Friday. Bring a toothbrush. You might be going straight to a cell. I laughed. It was a cold, hard sound. I do not think so. Evelyn, I think we should meet tonight, she scoffed. Why would I waste my time with you? Because I know about Vinny's pool and spa, I said. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was the silence of a heart skipping a beat. The silence of a predator realizing the prey has a gun. I know about the refinance in 2019. I continued, reading from the sheet Sarah had given me. I know about the $4 million. I know the trust is empty. Mia, she whispered. Her voice was no longer velvet. It was jagged glass. I am coming to the house. I said, 7 o'clock. Have Tom there. You will not tell him, she hissed. If you tell him, I will destroy you. You already tried to destroy me. Evelyn, you took my home. You took my reputation. You tried to take my son. You missed. I hung up. I sat in the car, my heart pounding a rhythm of war against my ribs. I looked out at the gray street. A group of teenagers walked by, laughing, glued to their phones. They probably saw the rumors about me online. They probably thought I was a loser. Let them think it. Let the world think I was broken. It is always the broken things that are the sharpest. I started the engine. I had a few hours before 7. I needed to prepare. I needed to dress not like a victim, but like an executioner. Tonight, the truth would come out, and it would not be pretty. The house at 124 Ocean Drive looked different in the moonlight. For 10 years, I had viewed this sprawling estate as a fortress of invincibility, a monument to the Sterling family legacy that I was merely lucky enough to visit. Now, as I parked my rusted Honda next to Tom's gleaming Audi, the house looked like what it really was, a mausoleum built on quicksand. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I had not put on makeup. I wore a simple black turtleneck and jeans. I did not look like the perfect daughter-in-law anymore. I looked like a woman who had walked through fire and burned away everything that was soft. I grabbed the manila folder from the passenger seat. It felt light, but it held the weight of an atomic bomb. The front door was unlocked. I did not knock. I walked in. The foyer was silent, smelling of lemon polish and old money. I walked straight to the formal living room. They were waiting for me. Evelyn sat in her wingback chair by the fireplace, her posture rigid, a glass of scotch in her hand. Tom stood by the window, looking out at the dark ocean. He looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped, a man carrying the weight of 2 women's wars. He turned when I entered. Mia, he said. His voice was tired. Mom says you have something important to say. Can we make this quick? I have an early train to the city tomorrow. I did not look at him. I looked at Evelyn. She stared back at me. Her eyes were not fearful yet. They were calculating. She was assessing my outfit, my hair, searching for weakness. She found none. Sit down. Evelyn said, I prefer to stand. I replied, Tom Sihil. He walked over to the coffee table. Look, Mia, if this is about the custody hearing, we can talk. Mom is willing to be flexible if you agree to the supervised visitation schedule. We do not want to hurt you. We just want Leo to be safe. Safe? I repeated. I finally looked at my husband. You think he is safe here? With her? Tom frowned. Of course he is. This is his home. I threw the folder onto the coffee table. The sound of the paper hitting the polished wood was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Read it, I said. Tom looked at the folder. He looked at Evelyn. Evelyn did not move, but her knuckles turned white around her glass. What is this? Tom asked. The truth. I said, the reason your mother needs to control your finances, the reason she needs you to live here, the reason she sued me. Tom reached for the folder. Do not touch it. Thomas, Evelyn said sharply. Her voice cracked. Just a fraction. It is just more lies from a desperate woman. Tom hesitated. He looked at his mother, then at me. For the first time in his life, the doubt in his eyes outweighed the obedience. He opened the folder. The room descended into a heavy silence. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the rustle of paper as Tom turned the pages. I watched his face. I watched the confusion turn to shock, and then to a horror that made him look 10 years older. He stopped at the third page. Mom? He whispered. Evelyn took a sip of her scotch. She did not look at him. What is this? Tom asked, his voice trembling. This says, Soyu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than this. Says the trust is empty. This says you took out a 3rd mortgage last year. He flipped the page. $400,000 to Soyu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than the Mohegan Sun Casino. A lien from a betting parlor in Jersey? He looked up, his eyes wide and wet. Mom, tell me this is fake. Tell me Mia forged this. Evelyn placed her glass down on the side table with a precise, deliberate movement. She smoothed the fabric of her skirt. It is complicated. Thomas, she said softly, the markets have been volatile. I made some Soyu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than investments to try and recover losses. Investments? Tom shouted. He threw the papers down. These are gambling debts. You lost $4 million? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. The money for Leo's college. Soyu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than Dad's life insurance. Soyu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than it is all gone. Evelyn stood up. She drew herself up to her full height, trying to summon the imperious matriarch she had played for decades. I did it for us, she snapped. I was trying to save the lifestyle. Do you have any idea how much it costs to run this house? To keep up your image? I did what I had to do. You stole from us, Tom said. His voice broke. You stole from your grandson. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. He looked broken. The man I had married, the man who thought he was a prince, realized he was just a pawn in his mother's addiction. I looked at Evelyn. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She glared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. You think you are so clever, she hissed. You little rat, you think this changes anything? I still have the lawyers. I still have the connections. I will drag this out in court for years. I will bleed you dry until you are begging on the street. No, you will not, I said. I walked closer to her. I stepped into her personal space, violating the invisible barrier she had maintained for years. Because if you do not drop the lawsuit by tomorrow morning, I am going to make some copies of that folder. I pointed to the papers. I think the board of directors at the hospital would be very interested to know that their treasurer is a bankrupt gambler. I think the membership committee at the country club would love to see the liens on your property. Evelyn flinched. You would not, she whispered. Try me. I said. My voice was low and cold. You took my home. You took my reputation. You tried to take my son. I have nothing left to lose. Evelyn, but you have everything to lose. Your name, your status, your pride. I leaned in closer. If I release this, you will not just be broke. You will be a pariah. The ladies at the club will not pity you. They will laugh at you. And we both know that is your worst nightmare. Evelyn stared at me. She searched my face for a trace of the timid, pleasing girl I used to be. She did not find her. That girl was gone. Her shoulders slumped. The light went out of her eyes. In an instant, she aged 20 years. She was not a monster anymore. She was just a sad, old woman in a big, empty house. Fine, she whispered. What? I asked. I will drop the suit, she said, turning her face away. Just, sao yu ting haoling. 2 hash is greater than keep your mouth shut. I want it in writing, I said, and I want you to move out of our lives. You do not call Tom. You do not call Leo. You disappear. Evelyn nodded once. A sharp, jerky motion. Get out of my house. She choked out. I turned to Tom. He was still sitting on the sofa, staring at the floor. Tom, I said. He looked up. His eyes were red. I am leaving. I said, I am going to get Leo. Mia, he said weakly. Wait, I did not know. I swear I did not know. I know, I said, and that is the problem. You never wanted to know. I turned and walked out of the living room. I walked through the foyer and out the front door. The night air was freezing, but it felt good. It felt clean. I got into my car and started the engine. I should have felt triumphant. I had won. I had slain the dragon. I had saved my son. But as I drove down the long driveway, leaving the crumbling empire behind in the rearview mirror, I did not feel happy. I felt hollow. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. They were steady now, but they felt cold. I had used blackmail. I had used threats. I had destroyed a family to save my own. I thought about Tom sitting on that sofa, his world in ashes. I thought about Evelyn, alone in her room with her scotch and her shame. I realized then that victory in war does not mean you walk away whole. It just means you walk away alive. I drove back to the small, dark apartment in Bridgeport. My mother was asleep on the armchair. Leo was asleep on the air mattress. I sat down on the floor beside him. I brushed the hair off his forehead. He stirred and sighed in his sleep. I had saved him. I had kept him safe. But I knew, deep down, that the mother who sat beside him tonight was not the same mother who had baked cookies and laughed at cartoons 3 months ago. That mother was gone, buried under the weight of necessary sins. I lay down on the floor next to my son and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. All I could see was the look on Evelyn's face when she realized I had become just like her, ruthless. The snow began to melt in Westport 3 weeks after the confrontation. It turned the pristine white lawns into a slush of gray mud. revealing the dead grass underneath. It was a fitting metaphor for our lives. The lawsuit was dropped on a Tuesday morning. There was no fanfare, no dramatic reading of a verdict, just an email from my lawyer, David, stating that the plaintiff had filed a voluntary dismissal with prejudice. The term "with prejudice" meant she could not sue me again for the same reason. It was a legal shield, but it did not feel like a victory. It felt like a ceasefire in a war that had scorched the earth so thoroughly that nothing would ever grow there again. Evelyn did not apologize. She did not come over to make amends. Instead, she announced to her social circle that she was taking an extended sabbatical to a wellness retreat in Sedona to focus on her spiritual health. It was a lie. Of course, she was going into hiding to restructure her debts and dodge the creditors I had threatened to expose. She left town in her Mercedes, head held high, maintaining the illusion until the very last mile. The house was quiet now. The terrifying silence of the last few months had been replaced by a different kind of quiet. The silence of two people who know too much about each other to ever be comfortable again. Tom and I were still married. We lived in the same house. We ate dinner at the same table. But we were no longer husband and wife. We were survivors of a plane crash, bound together by trauma, but unable to look each other in the eye without remembering the fall. On a Friday evening, I sat in the living room. The fireplace was cold. The only light came from the floor lamp in the corner. Tom walked in. He looked thinner. The arrogance that had defined him, the confident swagger of a man who thought he was a prince, was gone. He was working double shifts now, trying to repair the financial crater his mother had left behind without declaring bankruptcy. He looked at me, then looked away. "I am going to bed," he said. It was 7 o'clock. "Okay," I said. He paused at the doorway. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe he wanted to apologize for cutting up my credit cards. Maybe he wanted to apologize for believing I was a thief. Or maybe he wanted to blame me for shattering his world. In the end, he said nothing. He just walked up the stairs. His footsteps heavy and slow. I watched him go. I knew, with a sinking certainty, that we would not survive this. We would stay together for Leo. Perhaps for a few years. We would pay down the debts. But the love was dead. It had been killed by $40,000 of secret debt and $4 million of lies. I turned my attention to the coffee table. Sitting there, in the center of the polished wood, was the iPad. I had redeemed it from the pawn shop the day after the confrontation. I had used the grocery money, and for the first time, I did not care about the receipt. When I walked into that shop in Bridgeport and handed the ticket to the man behind the glass, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of my soul. It was just a tablet, a piece of glass and aluminum, but it was also the catalyst that had destroyed my family. Leo was upstairs, asleep. He was safe. He was back in his own bed. He had stopped asking about his grandmother. Children are resilient. People say, I hoped that was true. I hoped he would forget the image of his mother crying on the floor. I hoped he would forget the tension that vibrated through the walls of this house. I reached out and touched the cold screen of the iPad. It woke up instantly. The background was a picture of Leo smiling on his first day of school. He looked so innocent. He looked like he believed the world was good. I stared at the screen, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I had won. I had kept my son. I had kept my home. Evelyn was gone. But as I sat there, I realized that I had lost something. Too, I had lost the ability to trust. I had lost the softness that used to define me. I had become hard, sharp, and cynical. I had become the kind of woman who blackmails her mother-in-law. I was safe, but I was alone. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a notification. A chime echoed through the silent room. It was a cheerful, upbeat sound that seemed out of place in the gloom. iMessage. My heart skipped a beat. Leo's account was still logged in. I had meant to change the password, to disconnect it from the family cloud. But in the chaos of the last few weeks, I had forgotten. I looked at the sender name, Grandma Evelyn. My breath caught in my throat. She was supposed to be in Sedona. She was supposed to be gone. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading. Part of me wanted to throw the device into the fireplace. But the old habit was too strong. I slid my finger across the glass to unlock it. The message opened. It was a picture, a selfie. Evelyn was sitting on a terrace somewhere sunny, wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a tropical drink. She looked rich. She looked carefree. She looked undefeated. And underneath the picture was a text message. Hello, my darling Leo. Do not worry. Grandma is just on a little vacation. I am recharging my batteries so I can come back stronger. Do not believe everything your mother tells you. She is confused. I will be back to rescue you soon. This is not over. Love, Grandma. I stared at the words. I will be back. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the winter wind outside. She was not gone. She was regrouping. She was waiting. She was a narcissist who had lost a battle, but she would never concede the war. As long as she had breath in her lungs, she would believe she was the victim, and she would believe she owned my son. I looked up at the ceiling, toward the room where Leo lay sleeping. I realized then that the golden cage had not been unlocked. It had just been expanded. I turned off the iPad. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. I looked different in the reflection. My eyes were darker. My mouth was set in a grim line. I was not the prey anymore. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark, empty street. Let her come back. I whispered to the silence. I would be ready